recently, I gotta find the bottle. Here it is. I saved this bottle because I thought that this was the best Chardonnay I'd ever had in my life. It was a 2011 Meursault Geneviève from Burgundy, France. Absolutely stunning bottle of wine. And it was sad because I drank most of it, and my wife, who loves Chardonnay, she didn't get very much of it. She wasn't happy, but I truly love that bottle of wine. I thought it was so great. And when you think about Chardonnay, Chardonnay is a member of the Pinot Noir family, the Pinot grape. It's the largest genus of grapes out there, Pinot Noir. There's so many different versions of Pinot Noir and their variations. Pinot Blanc, Pinot Gris being Pinot Grigio, that sort of thing. It's all fun stuff. So Chardonnay, here's to you. So I would say let's take a moment, enjoy some Chardonnay and your smoked cheese, and we'll come back to this in about a minute or so.
Someone was asking if you could show that wine again. Yeah.
It's one of those rare things. I was at a Burgundy tasting with the Quartermaster Sommeliers in Napa Valley 4 years ago, and I had that as part of a 9 a.m. tasting seminar with wines from Burgundy, and that was one of them. And I never had a Chardonnay like that before in my life. And I loved it so much, it took me a long time to find it. And I found it at a place in New York, and I had to order it and have it shipped. But it was well worth all the bajillions of dollars that it cost, because it was just that good. So I'm seeing in the chat people like it. And somebody says they prefer Sauvignon Blanc. Well, that's a very interesting thing with this Chardonnay. This Chardonnay is not totally oaked. So it has a lot of bright, crisp acidity to it. A lot of aspects where you would get in a Sauvignon Blanc, the same tartness and the long finish because of the high acidity, which is interesting. Yeah, it is. Somebody says here they find this light for a Chardonnay. That's because if you're drinking things like cake bread or Rumbauer or those types of wines, those wines are not fully fermented. They have a lot of residual sugar, and they add glycerin to it to make the wine a little heavier. This is more in a true style of a Chardonnay than those wines. Like I said, those wines are more of an aberration than it is a true Chardonnay. And this wine is so food friendly, it's crazy. Just crazy. I know it goes well with the smoked Gouda, but more importantly, it's going to go really well when you have fried chicken. Always people say, oh, drink champagne with fried chicken. This would go well with fried chicken if you're looking for something really tasty to go with fried chicken. And I want to take a moment and talk about the fact that it is a screw top bottle. You don't want to drink it all, just put the top back on, throw it back in the refrigerator, come back to it tomorrow, it'll probably taste even better. Many wines, after they have a little bit of oxidation or aeration, taste better the next day. Not everyone, but the majority do. So it's not a bad thing to not drink it all tonight, or if you'd want to, by all means, go for it. Absolutely. Now on this cheese board, I noticed there was a chunk of brie. It has a grape stuck to it. Here we go. This chunk of brie. That's going to go nicely with this as well. And I believe that certain wines like this, because it's crisp and minerally, are going to help, and it has a high acidity level. It's going to cut through the fat of the cheese and make it taste really good. And then I go back to the other wines, the other Chardonnays, you say they're not as light as this. They're not going to do as well with brie cheese because they won't have the acidity to cut through the fat. So it's just a thought. And how do you know it's acidic? It's the finish. You take a sip, and then you can taste it for 1 or 2 minutes. That's a long finish for a wine. That's the quality of a good wine. If you have a wine that goes and falls off at the end or after you drink it, not so good. Not so good. Somebody says, how long should you wait to drink white wines? It depends on the wine specifically. If you have a wine like this one, which finish this says the 17, here we are 3 years later, no problems. This wine can go for another 2 or 3 years very easily. The higher the acidity level in a white wine, the longer it's going to last. The bottle I was holding up, this one, I don't know if you caught that, it's from 2011. 2011, so 9 years old. Not a problem. But that goes back to proper storage as well. You can't leave it on top of your refrigerator. You have to store it in a wine locker on its side in a wine cooler. Keep the moisture up to 70%, the temperature down to about 52, 53. You're good to go. It'll last a long time. I still have some Chablis from 2002 that I'm working through. And that's a long time. Now, I noticed that, Claudia, you and your friends are laughing. I have no idea what you're saying, but it's okay. This wine should be better with the Gouda than with the Brie. The Brie will be a little chalky probably, but not horrible. But it should be much better with the Gouda, absolutely. So this area, this is where the phenolic compounds of wine gather, and they go in your nose, and like I say, 70% or more of all tastes in your nose. I know that many of you have, hopefully none of you have this COVID stuff, but you've all had a cold in the past. And when you get sick and you have a cold and you don't want to eat, that's because your nose is stuffed up and you can't smell or taste. That's what happens. Absolutely. So it's pretty good, yeah? Thank you, Pinot Noir family. Now, with this wine that was in here, I don't want anybody to go ahead and do not rinse your glass out with water. Don't do it. Because if you rinse your glass out with water, the next wine's gonna be watery. All you have to do is dump it out or something else, but don't rinse out your glass with water. Just finish it, enjoy it, and let it go. Hopefully you got a lot of the fruit elements out of that wine. And what's very interesting about this Chardonnays like this, a lot of people are going back to what they call concrete barrels. Basically a big concrete vat sunk in the ground for heat to make sure the heat's more even. And then they put the grape juice in there, the yeast, they ferment the wine, and the concrete gives it that sort of limestone-y thing. The best wines in the world tend to come from vineyards that are sitting over limestone. I don't know why, it's just the way it is. That's the best ones. But anyway, that's that one. All right, let's get a thumbs up. Do we liked it all? Yeah? It's good stuff? Are we still drinking it? Have we finished? Are we moving on to the, not the wine, but, oh my God, somebody held up an empty bottle. Who was that? Mia? They held up an empty bottle. They're power drinkers. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Does everybody have this bottle? That's the next one. Pinot Noir from the Willamette Valley. And it's amazing because we just had Chardonnay, which is a direct variation of Pinot Noir. And now we're going to have the quote unquote red version of this. Now, Pinot Noir comes in many different flavors. There's light ones, there's heavy ones, one's from Burgundy, one's from Oregon. The Russian River in California tastes different than, say, just basically one's from Sonoma versus one from Carneros and Napa Sonoma versus one's from Monterey versus one's from Santa Barbara, certain vineyards, it goes on and on. Pinot Noir is the most mind-boggling grape out there because it's the most finicky grape. It's very thin-skinned. It's hard to grow, and it comes in these beautiful little pine cone-shaped clusters. That's why they call it Pinot Noir, because Pinot means pine in French, and of course Noir means black, so black pine clusters, Pinot Noir, right? That's good stuff. Now the Willamette Valley is in direct latitude with Burgundy, France. If you look at a globe and you put your finger on the Willamette Valley in Oregon and you draw a line this way, you'll hit Burgundy, France. So very similar climate in the sense that they have the same latitude and sun, but not necessarily the same, because Oregon and the Willamette Valley, there's a lot of rain and moisture, makes it hard to grow the grapes. Burgundy, not so much rain and moisture, although they have issues with hail and different things that go on in the process, the early formation of the grapes, the clusters. Sometimes when the hail comes and knocks those little clusters off, it's called colère, and that's what happens. Those clusters get knocked off. It's not a good thing. But this is a beautiful little Pinot Noir, 2018, the Four Graces, and I like this wine immensely. I've had this many times, and I had the privilege of actually going to this winery when I was in Oregon, and we got to enjoy some really special stuff. Now, this is a blend of different vineyards throughout Oregon, throughout the Willamette Valley. So there's some Yamhill, Carlton stuff, Dundee Hills, things like that in here. But again, this is a really beautiful, beautiful wine. Now, I don't know, how many of you drink, just with the thumbs up, how many of you, or hands up, how many of you drink Meiomi? Meiomi, do you know that wine? Meiomi Pinot Noir? I bring that up because that is 75% Pinot Noir and typically 25% Syrah. So it's not 100% Pinot. This is 100% Pinot Noir. But look at that color. Look at how nice, dark that is. Look at that rim. It's just sort of glowing. You can see it. Isn't that beautiful? All purpley. Now with this one, you want to let it sit in the glass for about a minute to 2 minutes before you even do anything with it. You don't want to just plow in there, because it needs time to develop the phenolic compounds on the top part. Somebody says, where is Willamette? Willamette Valley is about 20 minutes drive south of Portland, Oregon. And in this pairing, you're supposed to have, where's my notes? I can't remember what I'm doing anymore. I get so excited about the wine. No. It's all good. With this pairing, you're gonna have the, you should have some herbed goat cheese. Some of you should have some herbed goat cheese. And it's really beautiful to have goat cheese with Pinot Noir because it goes so well. The other thing that goes really well with Pinot Noir is the food I always say can do no wrong, and that's bacon. That's why when you have a beef bourguignon, which is from Burgundy, you take bacon, sear it, put in your mirepoix, your vegetables, cook those off, take the bacon out, use the bacon fat, cook the vegetables, brown the beef, put the wine in there, let it cook for a long time, and put the bacon in near the end. Fantastic. It's a good thing. But let's take a look at this wine. It's very dark. The rim is really clear. Now, if the rim were dark and brown, that means this is an older wine. Older wines, the rim gets dark and brown. And that's something that happens. And not always a good thing, but that's what happens. And this wine, when you hold it up, you can see it has a pretty good set of legs. So the alcohol is nice. The body's good. It's not watery. So let's smell it. Somebody said older wines are wiser. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Depends on the wine. But when you smell this, there should be like 4 really predominant things that come out at you immediately when you smell this wine. Dark cherry, red cherry, a hint of smoky oak, and wet earth. Now, am I crazy? Does anybody get that? Because if you look at your wine notes, we're talking about these wines earlier. It says that, let's see, it says cherry and cranberry, but I'm not getting the cranberry here at all. Maybe dried cranberry, that would be a stretch. So this vintage is a little bit different than normal. That's okay. Let's give it a shot. That's a good bottle of wine. I'm looking at Bruce Paul and this young lady with her headphones. She doesn't look like she's happy. You don't like Pinot Noir? I don't know. I can't hear her. But isn't this wine is delicious. And think about all the potential
I don't
things you
have
could
my
have with
wine.
this
I
wine,
forgot it.
from a steak to cheese like we're having here, or even some of these little cold cuts would work well with it as well. And Pinot Noir, I think, is the all-purpose wine. People like to talk about Pinot Noir with salmon, with different things that go on, chicken, steak, white fish with a little bit of a sauce. It just goes everywhere. So if you need a red wine that goes with everybody at your table, but you're all eating something different in a restaurant, when we get to go back to a restaurant, Pinot Noir is your best friend for food pairing if you need to have just that one bottle. And it goes great with Italian food, and I like it with pizza, especially for some unknown reason. I like it with pizza, and I like it with pesto. There's something about the herbaceousness of pesto and this wine that just tastes so, so, so good. So what do we think? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Yeah. Alice Chan said, wow, that's good. And you are right. You are right. I was asked if I have a favorite California Pinot in the chat. The problem with California is this. There's so many great Pinot Noirs from so many different places. The Russian River Pinots, they have that dark cherry and Coca-Cola thing that go on. Sonoma Coast is that cranberry, strawberry thing that happens. And then when you get to, say, Santa Barbara or the Santa Lucia Highlands near Monterey, they're all very, very different. And they're all equally as good. So it's really hard to say because it really depends on what I'm eating or drinking, who I'm with, time of day, all those factors. But I would say that in this household, we drink a lot of Pinot Noir, and we enjoy it immensely because it is such a great, versatile grape. We have a winery that we like. It's called Soter, Soter, in Oregon, and we get wine from them quite often. We're in their wine club, and it was a great time. We sat there in this barn. It was in June. It was raining cats and dogs. There's a fireplace going, and we're drinking some of the best Pinots we've ever had in Oregon. Just an incredible experience. And they do single vineyard Pinot Noirs as well as blends. And if you really want to do something good for the planet, then think about getting some Soter wine, because they do this thing called Planet Oregon that's all about helping the environment in Oregon. Now, these first 2 wines, I didn't talk about it yet, but I'm going to talk about it now. These first 2 wines are all about sustainability in the environment. The Schatz family, and I know Rodney personally, of the Schatz family, the Chardonnay, they use sustainable vineyard practices. They're not totally biodynamic as in a closed loop environmental system within the vineyard, but they do a lot of good things for the environment. They take the trimmings, they use those for fertilizer. They don't use pesticides, fungicides, all those other things in the vineyard. And that's very important to make a really beautiful wine. And the best wines in the world really are the organic and biodynamic wines because they don't have a lot of additional chemicals and things that go on. Now, they do use sulfur, and sulfur is one of those things they use to help retard degradation of the grapes as it's being picked and processed. And people say, oh, I don't like sulfites, but I'm going to tell you right now that on this plate, this little apricot has more sulfur in it and sulfites than 2 bottles of wine or maybe 3. Absolutely, because that's with that process of using it and preserving it. So if you think you have a sulfite issue, you don't. It's histamines that affect your sinuses when you drink. So there's that. Yeah, somebody's having a party after this. I like it. I like it. But this is so, so good. And I would encourage you to do something that I like to do with Pinot Noir. And I said I like it with bacon, is to take some toast or some good sourdough bread, toast it, put a little bit of mayonnaise on it, bacon, lettuce, tomato, bacon, a fried egg, some slices of avocado. What a great sandwich with Pinot Noir. Wow. You can't beat it. You absolutely can't beat it. Any questions about Pinot that we can go for here, or Chardonnay? I'm looking in the chat here. Yeah. But once you go down the Pinot highway, so to speak, and many of you have seen the movie Sideways, it was all about Pinot Noir. Every bottling of Pinot is so vastly different than the next. You really can't put your hand on it and really can't figure it out. There's some telltale markers in Pinot Noir if you're doing a blind tasting, but overall, it's very difficult when you go from Burgundy to Oregon, throughout California. And then there's Romania, which is the 3rd largest producer of Pinot Noir in the world. Those are amazing, much like the French ones. And then, of course, you have the south of France where they have Pinot Noir too, and it's totally different than Burgundy. It's crazy. Somebody asked, what's the rule with airing out wine? That's a great question. Airing out wine means that you're doing this, you're spinning it around. You want to get a little air into it to kind of loosen it up and get those phenolic compounds to come up through the glass so you can smell them and get that taste. A young wine typically will need aeration. Older wines occasionally need that, but you have to be very careful with older wines because sometimes when they hit air, I mean, if you're opening up a bottle of 1960 Mouton Rothschild, and I had this happen, not a 60, it was actually a 71. Open it up, we thought we'd give it a little aeration. We took a sip of it before we did it, put it in the decanter for 30 minutes, it was dead. It died. So you have to be very careful how you do that. But usually young wines, and not just red wines, but white wines, same thing. You need to let them air out a little bit and get those compounds going. So swirl it around, let it go. It's good stuff. Somebody says, what about using an aerator when pouring? Absolutely, you can do that. That works as well. I know that aerators, like a Venturi, they work pretty well. I used to have a product when I had my wine stores. It was called breathable glass, which had 3 layers of glass with little nanoparticle holes in it, which I don't understand the exact technology. They don't make them anymore. But it would aerate a wine that you would do in a decanter for an hour and a half in 2 to 3 minutes. Absolutely amazing. It works out, and it worked well with whiskey too. Absolutely. But yes, using an aerator, not a bad idea to kind of really brighten up the wine as you go. But it's always good before you use an aerator to sample it, take a little sip of the wine before you do that to make sure that's what you want to do. Because maybe you want a little bit more tannic structure to go with your steak and not so much to go with your chicken. I don't know what the case may be. What are we reading? So think about that as a way to go with that. So that's good stuff. I like this. Man, I'd forgotten about this wine. But it's a good thing. Now let's talk about storing this wine. If you don't drink all of this and you put the cap on tightly, put it in the refrigerator overnight and then let it sit out on the counter for about 10 or 15 minutes and it should be just perfect. And when you take a wine out of a cellar, wines are meant to be drunk at cellar temperature, which typically is 53 to 57 degrees. This wine has been in my house. It's 68 degrees, so it's a little warm. Not a lot, but just a little bit. And if your house is warmer than 68, then the wine is not going to show perhaps as well. And the hotter it gets, the more muted the flavors get. And you don't want to do that because you spend money on wine. You want to get the full maximum benefit of the flavor of the bottle. Absolutely. So bacon, I'm telling you, bacon with this wine, that's what you're going to do. Even tomorrow morning, you think I'm crazy, but if you get up and you have some of this left over and you make yourself that BLT sandwich with a fried egg, even if with or without avocado, doesn't really matter, make that sandwich, have this with it, because your taste buds are better in the morning than they are in the evening, because overnight your mouth sloughs off taste buds, they die and they kind of go out. And then you have new, like, sort of refreshed taste buds when you wake up in the morning. The best time to taste wine, if you're tasting wine, not drinking wine, but tasting wine, is really between 9 and 11 in the morning. No coffee beforehand. Somebody says, rule 1, open wine, drink it. Once the air gets to it, just drink it. Well, that's true too. There's no rule, there are no real hard and fast set rules on drinking wine. Absolutely. You just want to enjoy what you have, and you want the wine to really go with the food that you're eating. So when you think about the flavor compounds in this wine, we talked about that cherry and the dark cherry and the wet earth, think about foods that kind of mimic that or would pair well with that. Mushrooms, absolutely. Grilled portobello mushroom, a little cheese melted on it or in it, depending on how you're doing it, be fantastic. And on the charcuterie board, we have these little cold cuts. For those who have that, absolutely would be nice with this. The walnuts are going to go well with this as well. You try a walnut with this wine; it should go really, really well. And even the blue cheese will go well with this. This is your all-purpose friend. So don't disregard Pinot Noir. Somebody says, I'm a vegetarian, no bacon. Any substitutes? Yes. Do the grilled portobello, put in with some lettuce, tomato, and do it like a BLT, but no bacon. Same sort of thing. You'll be happy you did. Unfortunately, there's no bacon on the charcuterie board because that was not really possible for those who are asking. But maybe next time. You never know. You never know. It's good things. So we're enjoying it. That's good. So Ashley, what do you think we should do? Should we go to the other part?
Yeah. We have one more tasting and then the winemaker, right? So.
Well, I thought you were going to do the other part, then the other wine, and then the winemaker.
Yeah. I just wanted to check on time.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
All right, everyone. We are going to take a small intermission, but don't go anywhere because we're not allowed to be together. We wanted to have a little bit of interacting between you guys as neighbors. And so we would love to send you out into breakout rooms to see who else is on the call with you, to say hi, to find out if you live nearby, to find out who else is living in your home, and also to discuss what is your favorite wine ever, where do you get it, and how much is it, and why is it your favorite wine? So if you could humor me with this, it will only be 8 minutes. I promise it won't be painful, but I'm going to send you out into breakout groups. And the Zoom meeting actually isn't being very friendly to me today. So I've assigned those that I had pre-assigned, and then I might have to take a little bit of time to sort the rest of you guys, but here we go. I'm going to send you and we'll see how it goes. 8 minutes, that's it. And then we'll come back and we'll finish our other 2 wines. So enjoy.
Is everyone else in the great?
So here's the cheese plate, Andrew. Make sure it's incredible.
I would just like,
No.
Okay. So those of you who are still here, I'm going to unmute each one of you. And if you could just tell me, or if you could unmute yourself and then just tell me what neighborhood you're in, I want to make sure to send you to the right group because I split them by neighborhood. So
Cadence Park.
let's see. Mia, you said Parasol?
Cadence Park.
Cadence. Oh, nobody else is here for Cadence yet.
I want to go Cadence. We'll go
No,
Cadence.
we're Parasol.
We'll go Cadence.
Okay,
What's up,
Kim and
Cadence?
Drew. You'll go Cadence. There you go. Who else is out there?
We're on novel.
Awesome. Okay, who's left?
Or pavilion.
Mark. Pavilion.
No, student.
Okay, Patty?
Cadence Park.
All right. Let's see. Anyone else? I think. TG? Who's TG? Are you there? You can just hang out with us if you want.
Is everybody enjoying the wine?
I'm having little bits of it. My husband asked, should we only pour a little bit so we can try each one with you? And I was like, yeah, probably. Let's,
Yeah,
I don't think we can do the
remember,
whole bottle.
no higher than the equator.
Yeah.
It's really yummy.
Remember that it's recording this room too, so. I like your bandana.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are we recording the whole thing?
Yes, I had a bit of a computer glitch in the beginning. My internet dropped, so I missed the first maybe 8 minutes, but I have the rest of it recorded, yes.
Yeah, good. I'd like to get a copy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really bummed about the beginning. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Not a problem. I guess what I should do is in the next segment talk about how I became a sommelier,
Yeah, that would be great.
because that's a twisted tale in of itself.
Can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah. What a beautiful cheese board this is. And then I get to the very end, I get to whip out the big toy.
Oh, hold it down a little bit further. Oh, nice.
Because we have a lot to talk about with the last wine.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I have a lot.
Once everybody comes back, I'll just let you take it away. I don't really have anything to say after that, unless you wanted to ask people maybe what their favorite wines were and have them share.
Yes, I'd like that, to hear that. I'm trying to not use the notes.
They're
To be
beautiful.
sure. What?
I love how it's put together.
Yeah, I was reading over it right now. It came out really nice.
Yes.
If we open that chocolate port tonight, how long do you think it will last?
In your refrigerator?
Where?
1 month? 1 month
Oh, okay, good. Perfect.
at least, if not longer.
Okay.
It's there, and I'm gonna explain why. That's why I said there's a lot to talk about with that last wine.
Okay.
That'll be the longest segment, not just because Jeremy will be there, but because there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah. Do you use the like wine stoppers that suck the air out of the bottle? Do you
No.
recommend those? No?
I don't, because every
'Cause you
time you do
finish
that, you're sucking the taste out. Because the air that's in there, if you put a cork in it, it does basically the same thing. And after 1 day, it's not a big deal. After 2 or 3 days, then there's a little bit. But if you put it in the refrigerator every time after you drink it, it's going to last a little longer. Because cold compresses gas. The gas makes the wine better that way. I mean, it's hard to explain it, but there's gas and the phenolic compounds and carbon dioxide in there. And as you compress it down with cold air, it keeps it together better than if you just put it out on a shelf with cork.
Okay. Cool.
I don't know if that's the good, that's the easy explanation. There's a more complicated one, but I don't want to get into the mathematics and the physics.
So would you suggest putting everything in the fridge just if I'm having a little sip of everything?
I didn't hear that.
Oh, okay. If I'm tasting a little sip of everything, would you suggest just putting them in everything in the fridge to just hold them over?
Yes. That's what I'm going to do. Absolutely.
Perfect. Yeah. Cool.
No, absolutely. Just if you're having a little bit today, you can come back to these tomorrow. And if you leave them in the refrigerator after you drink them, you can go back and sample them most likely on Monday or Tuesday even. And a wine like the Chardonnay specifically, if you keep it really cold, that thing, because such a high acidity level, that wine's going to last a good week or more in the refrigerator. Easily. Almost all these will. I'm not so sure about the Cabernet, but the rest of them I know will.
That's good to know. I was just speaking with my husband and he said, why does no one tell you that? They just expect you to finish the bottle.
Not necessarily. But we're going to talk about a way around that too when we get to the port. But you don't need to finish it all. You need to just go ahead and enjoy it as much as you want. Put a cork in it, throw it in the refrigerator, come back to it the next day, or you can drink it all that night. Depends on your mood. Absolutely.
Looks like we have 25 seconds and everybody will rejoin us.
Okay, it'll take about a minute for that to happen.
Oh, sorry. It just asked me if I wanted to close the breakout rooms, and now it's going to do a 60-second countdown. All right, guys, welcome back. Sorry if you didn't have enough time, and sorry if it was too much time, but we hope that you had a chance to say hi to a few people and interact. So I'm gonna let Ken take it away again, and I think we're on our third wine. Bottoms
We
up.
are on our third wine. Cabernet Sauvignon 2017. Great vintage in California. Let me crack the top here and pour some in. I'm a light drinker right now. Talk to me later, though. You laugh. A lot of people have asked a certified sommelier all the way up to master sommelier. I'm one step actually below master sommelier. How do you do that? Well, it comes down to this. You drink a lot of wine, you taste a lot of wine, and you read a lot of books about wine, and you have to memorize a lot of arcane knowledge about wine. Now, for instance, nobody's going to say to you, what is the best vineyard in Piedmont, Italy for Barolo? Now, I like the Serralunga vineyard. That's just me. People are not going to say to you, where's the best Brunello in Tuscany, in the region of Brunello. I have a favorite. It's called Val di Cava. That's me. But the idea of becoming a sommelier is you do that and you take a test. The first level is a written test. There's 100+ questions. You have to answer, I believe it's 80% or more to pass. So that's pretty good. That's easy enough to do. That's just book learning, book knowledge. And then the second level, when you become a certified sommelier, that's where it's really hard. When I took the test, I had to hold a tray of champagne glasses filled exactly the same and walk around the room and serve them in the proper order of serving, which is to the right of the host and around going to the right. You serve from the right, take from the left, all these different things you do. And you have to go through this, and at the whole time they're like heckling you. These master sommeliers are heckling you and trying to get you to screw up in some way. And then you have to take a test where you have 6 wines like this, and you have to blind taste them, tell them what it is, where it's from, what vintage it is, and all these different characteristics, from the acidity to the finish to the wood aspects to the tertiary taste, which is like earth and leaves or green or whatever it is, all the way to how it was vinified, it was oak or unoaked, etc. It goes on. There's 23 criteria basically. So you have to memorize those criteria. You have to smell the wines. You have to be able to identify it, what the grape is and where it's from. And with the Pinot Noirs that we just had, it's hard sometimes because occasionally an Oregon Pinot can taste like a Burgundian Pinot. Sometimes a Burgundian Pinot can taste like one from Carneros, Italy, or I mean Carneros, Napa area, and on and on and on. And yeah, there is Pinot Noir in Italy too. So yeah, it's called Pinot Nero, if you ever see it. But now we're going to talk about the #1 most planted and favorite grape. Well, first we had the Chardonnay, the #1 white grape in the world. And now we're having the #1 red grape in the world, Cabernet Sauvignon. And there are a number of wines in the family of Cabernet Sauvignon, from Carmenere, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, which is the father grape, and Cabernet Pfeffer, a few other things. And how Cabernet Sauvignon it's relatively new on the wine scene. And new, I mean about 600 years old. It was Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc that came together. Here's the story. Cabernet Franc was feeling really randy, and he said, oh, I like that beautiful little blonde Sauvignon Blanc over there. And they came together, and they had a love child. And their love child is Cabernet Sauvignon. So the parent grapes are Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc. And you'll find both of those grapes are predominantly grown, of course, in the Bordeaux region of France. That's their ancestral home, basically. And in Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, but Merlot is the most planted red grape in Bordeaux, not Cabernet Sauvignon. So we have that going on. But that's a whole nother topic for another day. So let's take a look at this wine. Now you'll notice the rim on this wine is a lot more pronounced, and the legs are more pronounced. And they move a lot more slowly. So this wine has—
Which one was that? Sorry.
What?
Which one was that one?
The Cannonball.
Okay. I think that we are drunk already. Thank you.
Okay, that's okay. That's the Cannonball. So the legs are moving more slowly, which means there's more alcohol in this wine. It's a little richer in character. And when you have a wine like this, I like to call it a Michael Jordan wine. Good hang time. Now, if you remember, Michael Jordan, when he would go up to do a finger roll layup and when he was playing basketball, would go like and jump from the foul line all the way to the basket practically. That's hang time, as they say. So there's that. You look at the rim is clear because it's a young wine. This one's going to need a little bit of variation. Absolutely. It's going to need some variation. So give it a spin or two, or three or four. You can't see it, but on my desk here, it's glass. I'm just spinning it really fast. But don't do it so fast that it comes out of the glass. But try and get a nice little vortex in there, and it'll help the wine taste better. Now, this is a California Appalachian wine, which means that the grapes are grown and harvested from all over California and blended to go into this wine. Now let's give it a sniff. Mouth open, you know. Now, there's definitely some things going on in this wine, and I hope you can smell them with me. Definitely dark cherry. Definitely red cherry, much like the Pinot Noir. But then here's where the variations start happening. There's a sort of a red raspberry aspect to this, a little bit of cassis, like a little of darkness, a little dark fruit sort of thing. Not blueberry, but more cassis. Cassis is a bit heavier. You can definitely smell and feel the alcohol on this wine. I don't know what this is. I have to remember here. It's 13.8. So it's not that high in alcohol, but it smells that way. But you can feel that. You can definitely smell the oak, this toasted oak on this. Let's see what happens when we drink it. Not bad. Now, hopefully, all of you have this cheese. It looks like this. This is Irish cheddar cheese. And I'm going to tell you, this will be the perfect cheese to go with this wine. Absolutely. Take a bite, take a sip. And then today I saw something on television that I thought would go great with this wine. How many of you, with show of hands, have a waffle iron? Waffle iron? Yeah. And how many of you like mac and cheese? Here's what they did. They took their waffle iron, they sprayed some non-stick spray coating. They put some shredded cheddar cheese on the waffle iron. Then they put mac and cheese on it, more cheddar cheese, spray the top of it again, put it on the waffle iron for 3 minutes. And they basically had a mac and cheese waffle. Amazing. I thought, wow, how awesome is that? And with a wine like this, that should be just absolutely delicious. Something to think about as you're going through and drinking it. Now, some of the great wines of the world are from Bordeaux, France, and they're Cabernet based. You talk about the first growth Bordeaux's, the Mouton Rothschilds, the Chateau Latours, Chateau Lafite Rothschilds, etc. Those are all Cabernet based, and they're grown on what's called the left bank. And there's different types of soils as you go down the Garonne River from north to south to give different flavor profiles. I'm personally a fan of wines from Saint Estèphe, which is the very top of Bordeaux in the Cru regions. And what's interesting is most of the second growth wines, the majority of them come from Saint Estèphe. And I bring that up because I don't have $800 or $2,000 for a bottle of Mouton Rothschild. But certainly I have $50 or $60 or $70 for a bottle of Chateau Barton, which comes from Saint Estèphe, and it's equally as delicious. So you have to look for those bargains when you go out there to buy wine. Absolutely. And kind of understand the taste profiles of what you really want to get out of a bottle of wine. Now, there are wineries in Napa that pride themselves on making wines much like French Bordeaux's. One of the wineries that comes to mind right away is Clos de Val. Now, many people may know that wine it's called the Three Graces on it. It's a brown label, little white things on it. And they do wine in a very French Bordeaux type style. And those wines need to age for a while in your cellar, most like most Bordeaux's, because the tannins are high, the acid is high, and so much so that you really need to bring it down with a couple of years of aging to make sure that the wine tastes great. But I'm really curious, can somebody send me a chat or two? Let me know what your favorite Cabernet Sauvignon is. I'm just really curious.
While we're waiting, Ken, would you mind also showing the white Burgundy bottle again? Someone was
Oh, the
asking.
white
that.
wine, sure.
Yeah.
The trick on this bottle, by the way, is the word Merceau. Merceau is in the heart of Burgundy. Wines from Merceau, every California Chardonnay wants to be a Merceau. I'm telling you right now, every single California Chardonnay wants to be a Merceau because those wines are just the epitome of Chardonnay, in my opinion. Now, others in this household like Chablis for their crisp minerality more than the Merceau, which is a little softer. But I think absolutely that every Chardonnay in California wants to be a Merceau. And if you go to the store and you see a Merceau and it's not horribly expensive, get one, try it. Now, vintages wise for Merceau, you're going to look at 2015 as a good vintage, 16 is rocky, 17 was okay, 18 was stellar. Don't know yet about 19. And you can go back to 11, which was very, very good. And you can go back to 10, which was good, and 9. And then beyond that, I wouldn't bother. Let's see. Someone said any cab is their favorite. Someone said Frog's Leap. Frog's Leap is really good. Frog's Leap, it's shocking how the price of that Cabernet has gone up so tremendously. It's just crazy. That wine. Now, someone else wrote their favorite is Bailey Winery in Temecula, their Cab Franc, 2011, and they like their Cabernet Sauvignon. Absolutely, that's good wine, but the issue with Temecula specifically, the conditions for growing grapes there are not well suited to the Cabernet family of wines, Pinot Noir nor Chardonnay. It's too hot, the soil is too sandy. Cabernet likes gravelly soil, rocky soil, and almost all grapes like to have soil that's a real challenge. Now, the good thing about sandy soil is you don't get phylloxera because the little root louses that destroy the vines and did that in the 1800s throughout Europe, they cannot live in sandy soil. So that's the benefit to sandy soil. But sandy soil means a lack of water and moisture in the grapes, and things tend to get dried out. But Rhone style wines such as Syrah, Grenache, Counois, Syrah, those things, they all go really, Mourvedre, they all go really well in Temecula. That's the environment for those kind of wines because of the heat, and they can take the heat. They have thick skins. They can take the heat. Someone here said they liked Opus One, which is a great wine, much based also on a Bordeaux blend. Of course, as many of you know, that's a partnership with, oh my God, I can't remember, Mondavi, Robert Mondavi, and I forget the French people who did it. So that's a partnership wine, but they have a second label. I think it's called Whispering Angel or something like that. That's half the price of Opus One. It's the exact same wine. So if you ever go to the winery and you get a chance to taste there, oh yeah, it's great, but $230, $40 for a bottle of wine, get the other one, the second label. You'll be equally as happy and you'll save yourself a lot of money. Someone said Camus. Camus Caymus is an interesting wine. For many years, Caymus was being sold for $20 a bottle. Up until about 2006 or 7. Then the Caymus Special Select was voted the #1 wine on Wine Spectator on the cover. And the prices shot up. And then 2 years later was the #1 wine again, and the prices went up even further. So that wine's gotten a little out of control, and they're making too much of that wine. Same thing with Silver Oak. Silver Oak used to be phenomenal, and especially the ones from Napa that came from the vineyard in Napa. But now they have to source from all over Napa to get that Silver Oak wine, and they're making too much of it, and the quality comes down. So you always want to think about small production wines. Usually have a better taste profile than large production wines. Somebody's talking here about O'Shaughnessy, definitely good. Girachi, they do some fun wines too. I think they have a Cowboy Red or something that's pretty decent. So do we like this Cabernet? Did you eat it with the cheese? That's the big question. Hopefully you did. But the Cabernet Sauvignon, there's a couple of characteristics that happen with the Cabernet family of wines. You get that fruit thing, the cassis things, and if they're untamed, they have sort of a green bell pepper aspect to them, which you find more in Cab Franc than you do in Cabernet Sauvignon. And you have to really watch how the winemaking is done. For instance, Cabernet Sauvignon from Chile, the only way I can drink those wines is with fajitas because of the bell peppers. Otherwise, I can't even touch that stuff. Alice Chan says she likes it. Girachi and Cowboy are two different wineries, but they're owned by the same people. Just so you know. And somebody asked which cheese goes with it again. That would be the English cheddar would be your best choice. Walnuts would be good with this too. The English cheddar, the log thing. That's gonna be your best choice. I don't know any wineries at the Finger Lakes off the top of my head. This is Irish cheddar too, by the way. And notice how it's white and not yellow, or orange, I mean. Orange cheddar in the United States, they do that to give it a different differentiation, but I like it better this way. Less additives and different things in it. So let's enjoy our Cabernet for a moment. And I see a ribeye in my future. Grilled, little maitre d' butter. That'd be butter with some herbs or something in it, or blue cheese mixed in. Little disc as it's taken off the grill, let it rest. Butter melts on it. That'd be good with this. That'd be really good. And I'm very excited because we have the winemaker for the last wine coming to join us in just a few minutes. He'll be along. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about opening a bottle of wine. So far, all three wines have been screw tops. So that's pretty easy. Open, right? I have a device that was given to me that fits on a screw top bottle. You spin it around. It looks like a corkscrew for fancy parties. You want to make it look fancy, even though it's a screw top bottle. And by the way, screw top bottles are the future. Most every wine benefits from having a screw top versus a cork, because most corks can be contaminated with bacteria, other elements. They dry out. The wine gets infected with either air or something else and goes bad. 10% of all wine made with a cork is not drinkable. Somebody asked when the steaks arrive. Well, yeah, I don't know about that. All right. But let's talk about it. Can everybody see this? It's very important that you look what I'm about to do. There are two lips on the wine. There's one here, and there's one here. And this goes for all wine, not just this port. You want to not use a foil cutter. Throw them away, they're useless. What you want to do is this. You want to take your corkscrew and go around It's hard to do it without standing up. Ugh. And you want your bottle to look just like that. Now, that's not really pretty, but that's okay. I've never done this sitting down. It's kind of new for me. Throw that away. Now, normally, what we would do with this wine, you take your cork, go in, open it up. Not today. I mean, not for me at least. I'm going to use this. This is a Corvin. I don't know if anybody's seen them or used them or have them, but in this case, what I'm going to do, and you always still want to take the capsule off. Corvin says that you can do this through the capsule, but it wears down your needle. So what we do is we clamp it on the wine, thusly. We plunge, are you watching this? I hope. You plunge the needle, here we go, into the wine. So it looks like this. There's a argon gas cartridge in here. And you hit the little, let's see if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this. I can do it from up high. Anyway, you hit the little needle, the little button, and you pour the wine in. Trying to not make a mess. Now, why did I do that? Why did I not take the cork out? And this applies to every bottle of wine with a cork, not just this port. Because I don't want to drink this right away. Now, I know that when you take the, that just fell apart. I know that when you take the Corvin out, the cork out, and you put the cork back in after you drink it, this is going to last 30 to 45 days in your refrigerator. You can sip on it for a long, long time. But my goal is to have it a little longer and save it for the winter months when it's colder out, and I can really, really enjoy that. This is my old one. It's falling apart. I do have a new one. But the idea of the Corvin is to take the wine just a little bit out. So for instance, you have 3 bottles of wine. You have a white wine, maybe a rosé, and a red wine. You want to have a little bit of each night. Use the Corvin and just pour yourself a little glass, store them on their side, put in a cool, dark spot. They'll last for a long time. My brother and I, we took a bottle of wine when we first got these Corvins at the very beginning, when they came out. We drank half of the wine, and we put the other half in his wine cooler, and came back to it 1 year later. It drunk. We opened it up. It was just like it was brand new. No problems. Absolutely amazing. And somebody says, why don't you use the foil cutter? I'm going to get to that. So the foil cutter cuts at the top. You cut it down here. Every time you pour a glass of wine and you cut the foil here, wine drips down into the tin foil or the metal. So the second, you go up like this, pour the second glass, and now you're pouring wine that tastes tinny into the next glass. So the goal is to, number one, make it look nice, but more importantly, to not put tinny wine into your guest's glass. That's the whole point of that. Somebody keeps saying open wine and drink wine. Yeah, of course, but not every day it works that way. So you'll notice the legs on this wine are pretty substantial. And I don't know, did Jeremy join us?
Hey, Ken, I'm here.
You're here, excellent. So Jeremy, I just talked about pouring the wine, the port into the glass.
Yeah.
All right, so everybody, this is Jeremy Tredovec.
Hey, everybody, how you guys doing?
He's the wine guru of wines.
I wouldn't call myself a guru. I'm still learning.
He's still learning, but he's amazing. He's amazing. But most importantly, we just poured it into the glass. We're just starting to look at the legs, the rim. Why don't you take it away?
So that's a huge portion of the wine. It's the alcohol and the sugar that are both in there, and those are both carrying that big viscosity on it. We started out with this. It was kind of an idea that my wife and I had while we were sitting in the bar. When we first started our tasting room, for those of you guys that don't know who I am, we have a really tiny winery in Lodi. We used to be much, much, much smaller, and now we've grown into small. And it's something that we started just kind of as a bootstrap project around the last recession, 2009 and 10. I had a design studio, and I'd been working in the wine industry for a very long time, designing wine labels for other wineries. And we had a whim that we were going to start our own tasting room where our design studio was in the downtown of Lodi. And so I bought a bar, and I just started bartering with my friend wineries out there for grapes and wine and space inside wineries. And so this product was one of those times when we were building up. We used to just be happy if we could see like 5 people a day in our tasting room. And so we'd sit in there bored, and I was sketching this kind of little heart label on a napkin in the tasting room. And we started talking about the combination of chocolate and the port together. And this actually was inspired because I had a project that had started a few years prior with a client out of Singapore, and she wanted to do an infusion of ginseng in wine. And so I started thinking about things that might have a more kind of a domestic market for us. Nobody really wants to buy ginseng wine yet around here. And so I looked at chocolate. Chocolate is a very complimentary thing. One of the first reactions that people have when they say chocolate wine is they assume it's one of those off-the-shelf kind of concocted wine dessert weird beverages, and there's some formulation of a whole bunch of crap that goes into them. And I just wanted something that was very simple. I wanted it to be very cleanly, the bitterness of chocolate and the sweetness of port and the tannin that builds out those pure flavors. And so when you have this wine, it is nothing but pure bitter cocoa powder aged together with port. And so the fortified wine pulls together, and it kind of knits together those two beautiful things. So you're kind of like in a horse race of you're getting fruit from the port, and then you're also getting this chocolate undertone that kind of creeps up underneath them. And I think they're absolutely complementary items. It's just been a ton of fun to work on.
They are. I did not tell them how port is made. I didn't talk about stopping the fermentation yet.
So I got a really cool thing
about the grapes. Talk about the grapes.
When you're making port, there's a friend of mine here in Lodi, Saint Amant Winery, and they're probably one of the earliest producers in our region. They're one of a handful of them in the state. They do a fantastic job at port. And his dad, who was a very close friend of mine, he passed away quite a few years back, but I would go visit Tim when I was about 21. And Tim would always tell me, like, if you want to make a great port, number one, you can't do it with single varieties. I disagree with him on that. I work in some single varieties. But the number two thing was you got to use the right alcohol when you're fortifying. And so when you bring in these grapes, we bring them in quite ripe. So we're looking for bricks that are somewhere between 26 and 29. Bricks is the measure of sugar in that grape. And what I'll do is I bring them into the winery, and we calculate out where we need to stop that fermentation to get the right amount of alcohol that we want, the right amount of sugar. And then once we make our addition of high proof, which is like a brandy, we'll have that final fully balanced wine. And so we'll start like a traditional fermentation. We pitch yeast into it. We put them into macro bins or a tank if we're getting really crazy, and we'll inoculate and then do pump overs or punch downs through time. And then when we get to that magic zone, and it's usually about 12 bricks, that's usually kind of my zone that I'm looking for to fortify at. Instead of letting those yeast finish off the process and go all the way down to dry, we pour that brandy in there. And that brandy basically stops all of it. So we raise the alcohol up to a target. And the target for alcohol is somewhere between 18 and some change up to 19 and a half. You get above 19 and a half, and you probably have all had ports that finish very hot on the back of the palate. It feels like brandy or disjointed, and that's not something I like in those. I want it to be one even motion all the way through the palate. So back to what Tim told me. He said, use the right high proof. And the right high proof turns out to be a really distinct thing. So most brandies are a byproduct of the wine industry. So if you have lots of wine that go bad, I have a barrel or two that'll go bad. Rarely, no, it happens. And when that happens, it gets dumped down the drain in my facility. It's not a big enough quantity for me to worry about. But in a larger facility, you could have a whole tank. You could have 100,000 gallons of wine that maybe gets a little, the vinegar VA gets out of hand on it. That wine goes to DM material, distilling material. And so that goes off to a still. They process that and they still it down, and you end up with that very high cut of brandy alcohol. So that's probably 190 proof, 186 proof, very, very, very hot stuff. If you're making brandy, you bring it back into your facility, put it into oak barrels. You might add caramel to it, and you let it age for many years. So the alternate, and this was new to me because I had never seen it before, was a process called reverse osmosis or spinning cone dealcoholization. So if you're making very, very high-end Cabernets or wines that you're really, really are going to sell for a lot, and you really need that 91 or a 100-point score on it, the difference between 1/4 or 0.5% alcohol content can make a huge difference. That can mean the difference between you getting that score and it being a perfect wine or not. And so a lot of these wineries will go through and they use a process called reverse osmosis or spinning cone, and they bring that alcohol down using that process. Well, the byproduct of that is not waste wine that's a bad quality. That is amazing high proof. It's very, very aromatic. It's very soft. And so when I would describe it a long time ago, I'd say it's circles and squares. So on your palate, when you take a sip of that very refined high proof versus that distilling material high proof, you taste those on the palate. It's just angular and hot if it's the cheaper stuff. If it's that beautiful knitted reverse osmosis style stuff, you get this beautiful round, soft, almost aged brandy character to it. And so that is a character that I bring into our port. And that was a long answer to a short question, but I tend to do that.
The other question is, why don't you talk about the grapes themselves that are used to make port?
So, oh man, there's a ton. So the traditional ones are Tinta Cow, Tinta Ruiz, Suzao, Tempranillo sometimes, and Bastardo. That's another one that goes in. And again, back to my friends at Saint Amant, they've got a great little vineyard out there, and so they are the source for it. Now, for me, I live in Zinfandel country, and so I like to bring in a little kiss of Zinfandel. We also did a Petit Syrah port last year, and I also blended in a tiny bit of Petit Syrah into it. So I think these things can be complementary, much like blends. You can bring together all these pieces, and they can make a really beautiful wine. This is the beauty of California. We live in a zone. If I was in Bordeaux, France, or if I was in Burgundy, the rules are written. You know, I have to follow those rules, and it's pretty strict. In California, and even more so in Lodi, where we're a very undefined region. We are a Zinfandel region primarily, but you know, we have 100+ different varieties that are grown here in this region. So it gives me a ton of autonomy to experiment, play, and see what comes out of it.
Absolutely. Now, if everybody could take a moment, look at your glass and look at how the wine just sort of hangs there. We've already said earlier about the Michael Jordan hang time wine. This is the exact example of a wine that has great hang time. Absolutely. And we paired this with a chocolate covered cherry because when you smell this wine,
you're the pro, Ken, man.
Yeah, whatever. When you smell this wine, there's a couple of things that really come out at you. And I think Jeremy would agree that cherry is a big component of this wine for sure, dark cherry. But you do get that chocolate aspect. And that's why the chocolate cherry thing is just so perfect with this. Now, there are many things you can do with this wine. You can put it in brownies. I have a special recipe I'll tell you in a minute. But most importantly, this wine is very, very versatile. And do not hesitate to drink this with a nice charred ribeye, because the acidity of this wine is going to cut through the fat of a ribeye. It's going to taste absolutely fantastic. It'll be an experience you'll never forget. Absolutely. Jeremy, am I crazy or not?
No, not crazy at all. It's absolutely a great combo with that. Another thing that I hear over and over and over again in the tasting room is this is amazing with a little bit of vanilla gelato. You pour a little bit over the top and it's like an adult ice cream sundae. It's incredible.
Well, that goes on in my recipe. Are you guys ready for that? It does start with either vanilla ice cream or vanilla gelato. Absolutely. Take fresh peaches, skin them, throw them in a saucepan with some unsalted butter, saute them for a couple of minutes. They're just starting to get soft. Pour in some of this port and let it cook for about a minute. So it kind of deglazes and forms a syrup. And then put that on the ice cream, crumble on with some almond biscotti, and you're going to say that is the most elegant yet amazing dessert you've ever made.
You want to follow Ken's recipes. They don't disappoint. It's great stuff.
It works. It works. But
This has been a really, we're just coming into harvest right now. Not harvest yet. A couple of wineries have started picking for sparkling, but Verasion is almost done. The sugars that we're getting currently are at about 12.5. And so we're starting to get probably 2 to 3 weeks out of starting to pick grapes, which gets me antsy and I start jonesing to bring them in. And at the same time, it makes me nervous because I don't want to give up the rest of my year yet.
well, that's what it is being a winemaker. Somebody asked in the recipe, what was the first ingredient? It was peaches, but you can use nectarines. You can do this with apricots. Any sort of a stone fruit will work in this recipe. Absolutely. It works really, really well. Now, what's interesting too, Jeremy, do you know anything about the history of port?
You know, I know that I've had a history with port, and that's about it, Ken. So
All right. Well, let me explain real quickly for those who want to know. One of the reasons why it's called port is because the wines are harvested in the upper Douro Valley of Spain. They come down the El Porto River to the town of Porto. And the wine style was this blended wine style that came about in the 16 and 1700s and really capitalized on by English wine merchants. And as a result, the wine became port because of the town, not necessarily because of the grapes. Because you can find Tinto Roriz or Tintacao or any of the other grapes that go into this as a still red wine or as a single vineyard wine. It's just the style is port. And there are different styles of port. There's tawny, late harvest, late bottle vintage port, ruby, et cetera, et cetera. They're even making a rosé now of port, which I don't understand it, but it tastes pretty good. So I'm waiting for Jeremy to pull one of those out of his hat.
That probably won't happen for a while, but you know, one of the things you talk about when you're talking about all those grape varieties, and those are a lot of obscure, unknown varieties to most consumers. They're like a toolkit. The winemakers in port and the growers over hundreds of years began developing these varietals to fill certain spots in the wine. And so when we're working with these wines, grapes, either individually or as a group, they fill certain purposes. So you get something that's like Suzhou, and Suzhou can be a great standalone wine, but it really is driven for like color, acid, some tannin structure. And when you taste these side by side, you start to really feel how each varietal was designed to bring some component to that overall blend. So, you know, whether it was they were really looking for a fruity, bright, aromatic, or a floral note on the top of the nose, that's like a trousseau or one of the other unusual varieties that are there. It leads to endless exploration. You know, we spend a lot of time, you know, going through the Cabernet Sauvignon, the, you know, Merlot, and just sticking with those standbys. But there's a whole world out there. And I think that's probably one of the most fun parts of winemaking for me.
Oh, absolutely. It's really amazing you talk about that because 93% of all wine purchases are made of what known as the big seven.
Yep.
And 7% of all other wine purchases are all the other grapes. And there are thousands of them out there. But I want to go back to something for a minute. And Jeremy, you can help me with this.
Sure.
We talked about the taste of this wine having this dark cherry, chocolatey thing going on. You can taste a little earthiness in this wine, I think. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There's some tobacco and leather in here too. And I don't know where that comes from exactly. That's
from barrel age, Ken.
Is that the barrel you think?
Yeah.
All right. And you can definitely feel the tannins of this wine. And this wine will sit on your shelf and last for years and years and years. Now, it's not going to last for years and years because you're going to open it up, you're going to drink it and love it, and you're going to get more. That's going to really happen. But if for some unknown reason you don't get to this bottle, it will last for a number of years in the cellar. It's a very full-bodied wine. Every wine we had tonight was pretty much a full-bodied wine. There were no weaklings. The Four Graces, Pinot, the Chardonnay, of course, the Cabernet. And I think when Jeremy was talking about the spinning cone and the reverse osmosis, I believe that's happened with the Cabernet because I still felt a little bit of alcoholic heat, even though it was 13.8, and they had to probably bring it down, but you still feel a remnant of that in that wine. The viscosity, the texture of these wines are all really wonderful. And I really love this port specifically because it's so versatile, not just as a dessert wine, but as a wine that you're going to drink with just about anything. And by the way, if you like chocolate cereal, Try it.
You know, if you're pouring your port onto your cereal in the morning,
Oh, yeah,
that's
you
a
put some
whole
heavy
different
cream.
topic.
You put some heavy cream in there and a little bit of the port. You make kind of a pinkish
I
thing.
mean, I
It's
get
really
it, yeah.
good.
Hair of the dog. And
Yeah.
breakfast at the same
The
time.
finish of this wine, though, is very long and lingering. So you know it has a high acidity. So it cuts through fat. You know it's going to last a long time. The finish is there. It's just a great bottle of wine. I can't thank you enough for making this stuff.
Hey, it's fun. That's what we do.
Yeah. Well, while we have you on, why don't you tell us a little bit about the winery and the plans for the big Kahuna winery coming in about 2-3 years, and some of the other wines that you produce.
So I'll tell you, today was a winemaker's least favorite day of the entire year. And the least favorite day is bottling day. Bottling day is absolutely horrible, and no winemaker will tell you they love it, because on bottling day, that's your last opportunity to completely screw up all the work that you've done for the prior couple of years on that wine. Because once it goes in the bottle, that's it. You're done, pencils down. And they are always stressful, but that's part of the job, and I enjoy it. And what Ken was asking me about is the upcoming winery. We've been working on this for quite a long time, more than 3 years. I've been in architecture purgatory now for about 18 months. And hopefully we're wrapping that up in the next couple of weeks. We have a beautiful parcel out on a piece of river, and we're building a really fun winery out there. And it's an arduous journey, but it's still fun. We're looking forward to having some real winemaking facilities. We do some great wines, and if I took you through my winery, you would both laugh with me and cry with me, because it's a ugly, ugly tin shed of a building. It's very, very rustic. And I just keep telling all my staff, like, bear with me, come on, we're gonna have a beautiful place someday. And it's coming, but we have a very utilitarian facility, and we've put all of our effort into the wines. And it's not just me, I have a great team. My wife, who's not in here right now, and the rest of my team out there really, really help me out and keep everything moving. But it's been fun. I mean, it's exciting.
Absolutely.
Lodi's a really interesting place right now. If you haven't visited Lodi, you should check it out. It's weird right now in COVID. Obviously, it's limited the way that we can do tastings and other things, but it's a great region to explore. The wine values are huge. You get tremendous variety of different wines out there too.
It's incredible. I told Jeremy that my goal is to be the first one at the tasting bar when it opens.
Yeah, that's right. You will be there.
I expect to have a seat with a little thing on the little brass plaque reserved for Ken Spears. Yeah.
Oh man, you're gonna have to get in line.
I know. I'm just teasing. So, well, I'm glad you're here. And while you're here, Ashley, can we open it up and have people ask questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey,
Feel free to ask questions in the chat or unmute yourself and jump in.
Just unmute, I think, at this point.
I think someone did ask what kind of brandy is in the port wine.
So that's that high proof that I was talking about earlier, that circles and squares. It's a very, very soft. High proof is a different term than brandy. Brandy is something that is barrel aged, and so it's going to have more grape kind of character and flavor, whereas a high proof is really almost like a neutral spirit. If you think more like a really, really, really hot vodka, something like that. It's got a little character there, but that's kind of the...
Nice.
That answer the question?
I hope so.
Anybody else got questions? I like Stump the Winemaker. You're welcome to chime in and throw something out there. Doesn't even have to be port related.
He makes a lot of other different varietals. So
We do.
if you have a question
actually,
about a
I'll show you.
varietal.
This is currently my favorite bottle that I've got. And Ken, I don't think you've even gotten one of these yet.
No, I haven't gotten it yet.
Oh, look at that, Ken. This is
Jealousy.
The Bud Break blend. It's really amazing. There's a one-shot wine. So we had a few barrels sitting around that were waiting for our new winery to open, which is taking longer than we planned. And so I ended up releasing it. We did about 450 cases, aged 38 months in barrel, and it's like a Bordeaux blend. So we've got Cabernet Sauvignon, Malbec, Petit Verdot, Merlot, and something else that I'm forgetting.
Cab Franc?
No Cab Franc. Yeah, so just the 4 varieties, but delicious. 38 months in barrel, and it's a one shot because I'm not aging that many wines for 38 months if I can help it.
All right, so we talked. Yeah, we talked earlier about Bordeaux.
Of that?
I was saying we talked earlier about Bordeaux, and so we just told you the varieties that go into basically a Bordeaux blend. You had a question, Claudia?
Yeah, Jorge, when we are going to get a bottle of that delicious wine? You have my address, right?
That's Ken. That's Ken. Ken can do that for you, or Ashley. They can definitely take care of it.
Absolutely.
You won't be. You'll be very impressed with it. They're all very fun. Each wine I approach individually. I always describe myself as an intuitive winemaker versus a strictly technical winemaker, and the difference being, you know, I look at these wines I definitely am very much paying attention to the chemistry in it, but I'm also following my palate. And sometimes chemistry doesn't tell you the whole story. We have now in the wine industry, and it wasn't like this 20 years ago. Plus, when I started, it was tough to get really detailed numbers. Now we have really fantastic numbers of every detail in a wine. And a lot of winemakers can fall into a rut of simply following that formula. But these are very complex products. In the end, what you're tasting in that wine, these are really long chains of molecules that are in there that are creating those aromas and the textures and flavors. And those are very tough to quantify. There's been many, many, many times where I have a wine and I've put it together and I've felt that it's as good as it's going to get, but it's not quite where I'm loving it. And I put it in the bottle, and after 45 days, after it comes through that bottle shock period, I am just like, pardon me, holy shit, what happened? I cannot figure out what happened. This wine is so amazing. It's just turned into this beautiful, knitted, lean, silky wine. And it's a surprise to me. So there's some that you can control, but it's really like grandma making minestrone. In the end, you have to taste it and say, is this where I want it to be? And then make your adjustments and get it in that bottle and hope everybody agrees with my palate. Again, too, this is why there's, I don't know how many wineries there are in California, a lot. There's 11,000 of us or something. And that is a beautiful thing, because it can be your palate lines up with my palate. So if you find that you consistently are liking the wines that I'm making, that means that the way that I'm tasting and perceiving acid, sweetness, texture, bitter, all those things is lined with your palate. And so you're going to get to be where you can trust the winemaking decisions and the bottles that I'm producing and follow along. And likewise, if you're finding that you hate everything I make, there's another, 10,999 wineries out there for you to try.
Absolutely. He makes great wine, I assure you. I've had many of them. Many of them. But he's also known as a Zinfandel specialist in the Lodi region.
Yeah.
And what Jeremy does, you can talk about this in a second, he does a lot of green harvesting, which you may have heard this term in wine. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, this is green thinning, and the window is closed for this. So I'm going to talk about veraison. I talked about that a little bit earlier. Veraison, for those of you that don't know, is that point when the grapes turn from kind of hard and green to starting to get a little bit of color on them, and they're changing to soft, and they're starting to develop sweetness. That window lasts about a week and a half to 2 weeks, where those clusters are slowly turning purple. And at that point, that's really kind of your last period to control the vigor of a vine. A grapevine, by its nature, wants to be like a river bottom. We've all been in a jungle, hopefully at some point, and you've seen those vines that are just growing over and covering the trees and just being overly abundant. And especially in the Central Valley where we're at, grapevines want to be very, very vigorous. And so there's two things that we do to kind of control vigor out and make sure that crop is focused on the best quality fruit. One, and that's shoot thinning. We go out and make sure that each little new cane coming out of the vine, that we're only allowing the vine to focus on the major and the most healthy ones. And so we'll knock off a bunch of those little ones early on. And then the second thing, which is right now is the last period to do it, it's been about the last 6 weeks that we could get out there and do that green thinning. And the green thinning is where you actually go out and you have to pay pickers to go out and throw fruit on the ground. And I never really recognized how painful this is until I bought my own vineyard and I had to pay to have it done. And I can tell you, it's painful. I used to really give the growers a lot of grief when I'd go out into their vineyard and I'd say, hey, I want you to, drop some of this fruit down. And the old guy would be like, what the hell, Jeremy? I'm not paying to throw that fruit on the ground. And so now I know, because I know for us, it's a lot of money to have that done. And you're basically taking your fruit and you're saying, this is sellable fruit, and I'm going to throw it on the ground. But in the end, you're getting better quality, because what you're doing is you're allowing the grapevine to focus its energy on just the clusters of grapes that are left there, instead of dividing all that potential energy between a whole bunch of clusters that may never get ripe and they may never get texture. So the things that are amazing in wine and why you would taste the difference of it is you get phenolic ripeness in a grape. And phenolics are all the characters that are like tannins, they're the color compounds, the aromatics, all the really interesting characters of wine are in that phenolic category. And so if there were two columns, you get sugar. That's the thing we all know. If you get too far up the sugar column, then you're in the raisin category. And so I want sugar ripeness to get up this way, and phenolic ripeness happens at slightly a different pace. Most of the time, it slightly lags behind sugar ripeness. But then there's other times when we actually have phenolic ripeness happening faster than sugar ripeness. And those are the challenges. And those are the points when you go out in that vineyard and a winemaker will say, I can taste great wine out in the vineyard. That used to be an enigma to me. I didn't understand how they could be that good. And I really started to realize it when I tasted like a grocery store apricot. You've had a grocery store apricot, and then you had an apricot off your friend's tree. And that one off your friend's tree, that peach, it just invades your nasal cavity. It's so complex and aromatic. It makes you want to eat the whole thing. And that one from the store looks great. You take a bite out of it and it's simple in one note. And when you go out and walk those vineyards, I promise you, I could walk any of you out there with me with fruit. And I'd say, do you want to make wine out of this one or this one? Do you want to eat another one of that one? Or do you want to eat another one of that one? And you would just be like, I love that vine. I love those grapes. Easy, easy, easy. I mean, that is the goal for us, is getting that balanced ripeness so that we get the best characters out of it.
Yeah, that's the art of winemaking. Somebody asked about dry farming versus irrigation.
Yeah, dry farming is a great thing if you can pull it off. And I have a vineyard. We're operating under what's called deficit irrigation right now, which is we're monitoring the ground soil moisture contents, and then we only apply water as needed out in the vineyards. So there's a really weird thing that's happened. Not weird, but it's part of the life we live in. We're all drawing on the water tables here in California very, very quickly. And like in Paso Robles, they had a zone that the water table dropped 50 feet in 1 year. And you can imagine those old vines, they have a taproot that goes down 100 feet or so below that old vine, but they're not going to be able to grow 50 feet down in a year to chase that water supply. And so we're working with much more sporadic rainfalls. You'll find vineyards that have grown into it and they're able to sustain it. But as a newer vineyard, you're talking something that's less than 50 years. I think it's pretty tough to keep good control on a field like that. And you know, Ken, you got another question for me?
I was going to make a comment about dry farming.
Yeah, go for it.
If you're driving north on the 15 freeway from the 60 towards the 10 in between those two,
I know which
one of the oldest vineyards in California are right there in that Rancho Cucamonga area, and almost all of those vineyards are dry farmed.
Yep.
And they have that water table, but that water table is shrinking. You can see it in the vines. Specifically, I grew up in that area. It used to be lush and green vines. Now they're little twiggy things. But some of those vines are 100 plus years old, and they only give you 2 or 3 or 4 clusters of grapes. So you don't have to do any green harvesting or thinning. You're just happy to get a cluster of grapes from that
I think Carol Shelton
boy, do
does
they taste
some
good.
of those. And
What?
she does a great job on those. Those vineyards are really, really cool. And if I own those and I started to see that stress happening on those old vines, I probably would put irrigation in, and I would start just giving them the minimal dose just to keep them healthy. These are like, what other product do you get to eat or drink or enjoy that's that old? Maybe olive oil comes from old trees, but man, this is a really special thing. In Lodi, we have 110,000 acres of planted grapes. It's a huge amount. In this, we have about 1,000 acres of pre-prohibition grapes. That means things that were planted before 1933. And every year we're bulldozing out, like this year was probably 150 acres got pushed out of the ground. And it's incredibly sad to walk through these, but it's a metric of business. The pricing isn't there, and I can't blame the growers if they're not making money on that parcel of land and they need to run their business. I can't tell them not to do it. But why does it make any difference to us? And Ken, you can cut me off if I get boring, or anybody else, but why does it matter that we have an old vine? And the thing that matters about it is, if you can imagine around 1900, and you wanted to plant a vineyard on your property, currently you can go to a big nursery like a Duarte. It's like a Lowe's for commercial growers. And you can say, I want 10,000 Zinfandel vines. And they're going to ask you, what kind of a root stock do you want it on? That's the root that's in the ground. And then what kind of a cutting on top of that? What kind of a clone do you want? And you have to think of clones like tomatoes. You got a Roma or an Early Girl. It's what's grafted onto the top of that. And so you can pick your perfect selection for your property. You can order 10,000 of them and you plant your block, and you've got this perfect 100-acre block of a scion of Zinfandel clones. They're all the same plant. Now in 1900, you would go down the road and your cousin Giuseppe, he would be pruning his vineyard. And you'd say, hey, Giuseppe, can I go out there and collect all the cuttings off your vines after you're done? And then you take them back to your property and you root them. Why does it matter? Again, the Zinfandel, vines in particular, are very prone to genetic mutation. So for us, like if we could cut our hand off and every year we could grow a new hand, eventually we'd have some deformities that would happen in that. And that's what happens out in these vineyards is those vines, every year they kick out that new shoot. Every once in a while you get these changes that happen out there. You'll get a different variety, a different character. And then even going back further, those varieties your cousin Giuseppe had, he probably didn't have a perfect planting. He probably had a little bit of Petite Syrah, or he had some Mourvedre, some other weird clone that snuck its way in, mission grapes. And so these old vine vineyards are not just one homogeneous field of perfect Zinfandel expressions. They're this wide variety of all these aromatics, and you can taste them side by side, vineyard by vineyard, on the same road, same soils, and you go, why the hell does this one taste like that, and this one has all this other aromatic to it? You know, there's some farming differences, but in the end, it's just that particular batch of clones.
Yeah, and a lot of the older vineyards had what are called fill blends, where they would put the different grapes.
Absolutely.
Like every fifth grape was a Mourvedre, every eighth grape was a Grenache or a whatever. So somebody asked, what are you thinking about making for your next port? What are you thinking about doing differently, if anything?
You know, I probably will do the same thing because it's worked and I love the way that it balances out. So I probably will stick with what I'm doing. It took me a long time, and you think that chocolate research might be a fun thing to do, but I can tell you it got tedious after a while researching what kind of chocolate I was actually going to use in this too. We went through a lot of different variations. And I've been working on some other little fun things that are spins on that, but we'll see whether that comes around. I have lots of shiny pennies that distract me in my portfolio, and I need to stay focused. So
yeah, that's all good. I keep asking him for the sludge from the production of the port. He will not give me a jar of the sludge.
There, Ken. Yeah, because when you add the chocolate into the tank, it settles out, and it is literally sludge on the bottom of the tank. You can stick your hand in it. It's just like a ganache of chocolate. It tastes amazing. And like Ken, I have a lot of chefs that always are hitting me up for that stuff to make gelatos with or bake with or whatever else. It's pretty amazing.
Okay, so Ashley, how are we doing on time?
Good. I mean, it's 6:51. If we're ready to wrap up, we can wrap. Any other questions or comments before we take off and maybe get some more food? Somebody's asking me to deliver steak to you specifically, Ken. So apparently,
Please bring it.
yes.
Bring it. Absolutely. I hope everybody had a good time tonight. And if you have any questions, send them to Ashley and her team. They set up a great event and a great cheese board. This thing, as I'm holding it here, this thing was spectacular.
Oh my God, that's huge.
That thing is just spectacular.
Yeah.
But I just want to say thank you to Jeremy for joining us.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you to you for having me on. And then let it go back to you and have you wrap it up.
Yeah. Also, I would love to say thank you to Ken, everyone, Spirit Hands. Thank Ken for all of his knowledge. I learned so much. I hope you did as well. And then also Entertaining Events is the catering company that we used to create the charcuterie boards and kind of put this all together. So we are actually partnering with them, hosting another event in September 19th. It's called A Taste of Agave, and it's a tequila tasting event. So if you're interested in a little bit hard liquor, the bottles should be a little bit smaller because it could get a little crazy, but it should be a great night. We'll learn all about that. So yeah, stay tuned for the upcoming eBlast announcements for information about that event. And I guess, hope everyone drives home safe tonight, right? Have your DD. I don't know. But that's all that I have. So thank you so much for tuning in with us on your Saturday evening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and continue chatting up and being in relationship with one another while we have to be apart. So thank you guys. Enjoy your night.
Thank you all so much. Jeremy, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
Yay.
Oh, glad to be part of it.
Too bad we only scratched the surface of wine.
Let's keep on scratching it
Thank
then.
you all.
You guys not busy right now. Is anyone busy here? Is anyone busy? I got all the time in the world. It's afternoon for me. So let's do something. Let's change up the party.
I have to figure out what to have for dinner now.
No,
Steak.
eat. Let's drink some.
Definitely steak.
Yeah. I really like
Thank you
the.
guys. It was
really like this.
fun.
I'm glad you liked it. I really like the Chardonnay.
Me too.
They're all delish. Very
Yeah, they were all
delish.
good.
Good
Thank
choices.
you.
Did you pick them or was just random?
Yes. Yes.
You picked them?
Yeah.
Good
We were
stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was fun.
Okay, now it's getting smaller and smaller. Okay, Aiko, come over.
I can see you, Alberto. I'm gonna go over your house now.
Okay. I'll see you right now. Okay?
See you in there.
Continue the party.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, from here.
Nice. Nice.
Ciao,
Have a great night.
Buonasera.
Good night. Good night. Oh, that was fun. That was fun, huh? Oh my God, that was fun.